Our guest has arrived. He is Titus Lotee. Titus is the honourable member for Kacheliba Constituency. He's our guest. Good morning, Mheshimiwa.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Welcome to the hot seat of the situation.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Yeah.
So, Mheshimiwa, Siti Muga is not in today, but he has given me the proverbs and to share with you.
Good.
Today, the proverb is from the Kingdom of Morocco, and today's proverb says, if you have to beg, beg the rich people. If you have to beg, beg the rich people. What's your interpretation of this proverb?
Oh, well, I agree. I totally agree with that proverb. Because if you look at the Bible, Jesus said, you knock, and finally the door will be open. And actually, if you continue with that kind of reading, they'll tell you there was a lady who was poor, and she went to a judge who was rich and continued knocking until the judge said, let me give her what she wants, because if I don't, then she'll continue disturbing me. So it basically is true that it's the rich people that can be able to give you, because if you go to a poor person, even if they have the will to give you, they have nothing to give you. So I think the proverb is okay from the Kingdom of Morocco. You said so, and I appreciate that at least there are people that can be able to, from the Islamic world, be able to resonate with what the Bible says. Great.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure many people will resonate with this particular proverb. As a member of parliament, every member of parliament must belong to at least one committee.
Sure.
And a lot of business of parliament, especially in the National Assembly, happens in the committees.
Sure.
In which committee do you belong?
Well, I belong to two committees. I think the main committee is environment, forestry, and mining. And then I also belong to another committee called the diaspora workers. Basically, we are trying to, in this committee, trying to ensure that all the diaspora, and especially those that are in UAE are actually taken care of, because we know what has actually been all these years. We've actually heard of very sad tales and stories coming from the UAE. So we're trying. It's the first time this committee is established. It's a new committee. But then the main committee that I belong is the environment, and we can actually see that our environment is really beaten. We predict weather. The weather is predicted today. The weatherman is saying it's going to rain for the next 6 months. And then in 2 weeks, we find that there are no rains across this country. So we are also trying to be abreast with what is happening across the globe to ensure that Kenyans are not left behind.
One of the things that we've talked about many times here is we know the business of the House happens in committees, and this is where committees then are able to, when it comes to oversighting the executive or the various agencies of the executive, it happens in committees. When it comes to investigating things that could have to come to the public domain, things that may not be going right in government, committees will then do this. They'll summon, and you have powers to summon anybody in the Republic of Kenya to come and respond to questions that you may have as Parliament. But also we say that this is where we see a lot of monkey business taking place. So there's a lot of pomp and color as a committee is conducting an investigation, and then you see the report of that committee and you wonder, what on earth was that all about? When it goes now to the plenary of Parliament, it's either shut down or nothing much comes out of it. Your committee, are you involved in any current investigation or matters that you're seeking to get a deeper understanding from the executive?
Sure. Sure. First of all, I want to make it clear that what you've said is correct, but not in every committee. Most of the things, most of the times the committees are conducting business is actually a parliamentary business, so it is recorded in the answered. So any Kenyan can be able to access this. And every time there is a committee proceeding, you are allowed as a Kenyan to participate in this committee. And as a Kenyan, you're also allowed to petition a committee to investigate a matter. So as we've seen this taking place in this country, what I can actually say is that, there are also monkey businesses I cannot reject. I'm not living in a different country. I'm living in Kenya. There are monkey businesses where, if an investigation takes place, even from an audit, the Auditor General reports finally find itself in the House. It finds itself in the committee, and the committee is supposed to investigate, and the committee is supposed to make recommendations. So sometimes, you know how Kenyans operate. Immediately, a matter is coming up. the people affected will try to talk to the Auditor General, and if the Auditor General cannot be able to arrest that matter, and then it escalates up like that. It comes finally to the House, and when it comes to the House, then they want to rescue themselves from there, and if it goes through that, it goes to the courts. They want to bribe the judge. So I'll tell you, Kenyans are very ingenious in terms of trying to get themselves out of issues. So sometimes they do get themselves out from the Auditor General. There are things that happens, and the Auditor General and the team will be able to get it out because these people are able to talk to them. If they don't do it at that level, then it goes to another level. It goes to Parliament. Sometimes it gets out from there. Sometimes it goes beyond that, and Parliamentary commences prosecution. And it goes to courts, and you find at the prosecutor level, then it can disappear, or sometimes it goes all that full hearing. And even at the level of full hearing, the judges somehow can be compromised. And so sometimes all the sieves, all the 3 sieves, 4 sieves, 5 sieves before somebody is convicted, people will always try to get a way out. So in Parliament, just like any other institutions, you find some monkey businesses, but not all the time. The other question you asked is about what we're doing currently in our committee. In one of the investigations that we're currently taking place is the African Climate Summit. You know, we had a climate summit last year in November, where 25 presidents came. The whole Africa was here. Actually, the whole world was here. We tried to talk about matters climate. And there were a lot of money that were poured in. 4 billion shillings from donors came in. For
what?
For the function, for the summit.
4 billion shillings.
Around 4 billion shillings.
For the 2 days of the summit?
For the 4 days.
4 days.
4 days of the summit.
Okay, 1 day was registration. The other day
of
was
course.
closing.
Yeah, and then of course we actually have 1 day and 1 day.
Yes.
Yeah, 4 billion shillings. We are investigating that matter. You actually saw that in the newspapers a month ago, where we really asked the cabinet secretary and the PS responsible and all people responsible to come and tell us how were these monies, first of all were this money coming, from what sources, and what were the interests of those people who actually brought in monies, and how have this monies been expended, because 4 billion shillings is a lot of money to be expended in 4 days. It basically tells you that we are spending 1,000 million shillings per day. That is like 1 billion shillings per day. So we are, on behalf of Kenyans, trying to get to the bottom of the matter. So when we ask these people to come, the responsible people to come, including Price Waterhouse that was managing this fund, they were not able to give us the details that we wanted. They will give us breakdowns that are actually not legit. If they tell you that the head of state that came spent 98 million, fine. The people that came in from Kenya spent 100 to 200 million, fine. Who are these Kenyans and how are they facilitated? The media was also there, and I think you also accused media houses, not you or spies, but probably media houses, to have taken like 100, 200 million shillings for the 2 days. I don't know what that will entail. So basically, we're still in that investigation. They have come to our committee twice. We've asked them to give us a legit, comprehensive report, which we expect the report to come out in the next 2 months. In 2 months, if we do not get that report, then we will escalate it up. And I'll tell you, I'm saying this in spice. We say this, it was on live coverage. We as a committee, we're not going to compromise. If they tell us how they spent the money and it's legit, then we'll tell Kenyans, of course, 4 billion shillings was expended very well. The African Climate Summit was good. But if we find that there are gaps, if we find that there are explanations that cannot be met, then we'll tell Kenyans. So,
what made you start this investigation?
What made us start this investigation is Kenyans. Because Kenyans want to know. Kenyans are a very inquisitive lot. They will always want to know about everything. So even us, being members of parliament on behalf of Kenyans, there are those who are telling us, oh, well, the government said we did not spend a single dime of public coffers on this. So then that brought up the matter, well, who's funded it? And so the investigation started, who funded it? And then we found all those people who funded it. And again, this is something that we, as Africans, we've suffered from. A lot of people fund NGOs, a lot of people fund institutions because they've got interest. So we wanted to know, is it an interest that the climate summit was done on behalf of Kenyans and on behalf of Africans, or was it done on behalf of the funders? So we were investigating who are these funders and what was their interest. Because after that, there were a lot of pledges that came from donors, a lot of pledges that came from the UN, a lot of pledges that came from other institutions. We're trying to get what was the outcome. We have not so far seen the pledges, the billions of shillings that we will have actually gotten out of the climate summit. So we're trying to say, was it just a public show? or was it something that goes beyond that? So first of all, we want to investigate to know the motive of the funding, the source of the funding, and the expenditure of this funding.
Who have you summoned so far?
We've summoned the PS that was responsible, and the whole entire team. You know, there was a secretariat that was set up. The secretariat has been summoned. PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was the fund manager, was also summoned. So we've summoned the entire team that actually managed the whole thing. We are yet to summon the cabinet secretary, because if this team is not able to satisfy the committee, then the committee will have to escalate it up and get it the cabinet secretary. And if it doesn't, then probably we might even petition the president to come and tell us, because the president played a very key role in ensuring that this thing is played in Kenya.
Yeah. I'm concerned about why is there interest around this specifically? And we've seen Auditor General, Controller of Budget, people who are tasked with raising queries about much more money that is unexplained throughout the economy for years, and why there hasn't been this kind of activity around having those explained. What is different about this particular climate summit and the 4 billion shillings?
One of the thing about this climate summit is because globally we are actually going through what we all know, the climate change, and there's a lot of interest in this. And we have to get it right as a country. And the fact that we were given the privilege of holding and hosting those things, it gives us the opportunity to be able to make it right, so that probably we become global leaders later. If we get it right, and then we get it right. If we get it wrong, then we will definitely be in the bad books of the world. So that is the first concern, that as a committee, then we will need to let Kenyans know. It's the first thing that has ever happened. We've never had such a big forum in this country like that. So we need to get it right, that Kenyans were able to do it. They got the funding, they got the expenditure, they got it right, and that the pledges that came, then were able to come and support the climate in this globe. Two, the Auditor General specifically looks more on the funding that comes from the exchequer and those that come from the donor into the public coffers. But this one was a specific fund that doesn't go to the public coffers. It is a fund that goes to a secretariat. The Climate Summit Secretariat that was managing it. So we are also raising it so that the Auditor General, if we cannot be able to satisfy, then the Auditor General can take it, because at the end of it all, even if it went to the Secretariat, it didn't go to the summation of the funding that comes into this country. So the Auditor General can be able to pick it up, because at the end of it all, whether it came to the consolidated fund or it wasn't, it is still money that was expended by public institutions in this country.
Do you smell a rat? I mean, for you to then have the conversation, I mean, last you talked about, going to actually sit down. Is there something that doesn't sit well that would then say, well, you know what, then we need to ask questions? It doesn't quite sound right.
Well, at this point, I cannot say that I smell a rat, but the magnitude of the expenditure within the very short time, then raises the queries. Anybody can, like if you've been spending 100 shillings per day, and then within a day then you start spending 10,000 shillings, then you have to ask yourself, what is it that has made me spend 10,000 when I've actually been spending 100 shillings? So basically that is the question. I cannot at this point say that I smell a rat until when we get the explanations. If the explanation will be legit, and then we can be able to clap and say, yeah, we have got the capacity to spend that big money.
But is it 4 billion shillings for only the 4 days of the summit, or does it also include the build-up to the summit?
Well, it includes the build-up to the summit.
Okay, and how long is the build-up?
The build-up to the summit, I think, we started 3 months too, and we were supposed to wind up this thing in January. We've again pushed it to March, and again we were still pushing it up again. So we are also questioning.
So it goes into maybe about 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months. But where the expenditure was, where the spike of the expenditure was during the 2 days. The other was is just running the secretariat, getting the reports, which is normally something that will not probably even cost you probably 100 million. Because one, the institution that is called the secretariat is being housed by well-wishers, so they're not even paying rent. They are the vehicles they're using or the equipment they're using are probably paid for by well-wishers. So we are trying to investigate at the time of the expenditure.
Yeah.
I am 100% sure this will not, the other build-up or even aftermath will not take like 100 million. And yet we're talking about 4 billion. So we're probably saying, because of the 4 days, that is where we expended close to 90% of this funding. And that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what point does a committee such as yours start and end an investigation about expenditure of public funds, and where does the Public Accounts Committee come in on the expenditure of public funds?
Immediately, our point is the point where we start is at the point of this item being raised by the members of public or even within the committees. So the committee can say, well, within our own purview, we find that there's a matter here that we need to look at. Or a member of public can petition a member of the committee or the committee itself to say, please, can you, on behalf of ourselves, get to investigate this? And I think this is one of them. So we can then start to look through and see what is it that is. After we've finished, then we can be able to take our reports up all the way to the main house.
Okay.
And then from the main house, then it can be taken from there. The Public Account Committee is also equally given the task to look at it at any time, because even them, they have to look through all the committees, all the reports, anything to deal with our accounts in this country. So I cannot say that there is a delimitation of where the Public Accounts Committee comes in and where the committee itself of the particular matter comes in. It is a matter of who picks it first, just like the DCI and the ESCC.
Yeah.
So sometimes you find there's a matter that goes to ESCC, and that matter probably will have been prosecuted by the DCI, or there's a matter that is done by the DCI, and then you find it concurrently being looked at by the ESCC. So both of them are actually committees that are supposed to bring up this matter. So if ESCC probably comes up with the prosecution because of a matter, DCI will be happy at least some work has been done. Or if the opposite happens, despite the fact that if you look at their mandates, they're a little bit different.
Yeah.
But all of it can lead to prosecution, because at the end of it all, we are all trying to work for the good of this country. So between the Public Account Committee and any committee, it is who starts first. But I think it is the purview of the committee to be able to be very critical in terms of looking at it, because the committee mandate is specific. Public Account Committee looks at anything money across board.
So how far down the road are you with this investigation? When should we expect to get a report out of this committee on this particular matter?
Well, I said we've given them time, and probably in the next 2 months. I said that earlier, so that they can give us the report. If they give us a legit report, then the public will still get to know. If they don't, then the public will still get to know. So that is all that we're doing.
Are you also investigating the outcomes of the conference?
Yeah, we are. The reason why I say that, there were a lot of pledges. You remember when the conference was being closed, there were a lot of pledges from across the globe. People say we are pledging billions. Actually, there was around $500 billion of dollars pledged for various activities. We are also trying to, on behalf of Kenyans, where is it? Because after the public pronouncements, then who tells Kenyans what have come?
Was that money pledged to Kenya, or was that
globally?
Money pledged
Globally.
to? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was pledged to the climate action agenda for several things, for several countries to then domicile.
And there are those that will definitely come to Kenya.
Okay.
So we are specifically then looking at
what was pledged for Kenya.
What was pledged
globally?
What
will come to Kenya?
What first of all was pledged globally, because it was pledged from Nairobi.
Okay.
And so it is us to look at it, so that we can also be able to report to the globe and say, listen, this is what was pledged and this is what we've gotten. Then specifically now we center to Kenya, because that is where our interest is. What is it for Kenyans? What has come for Kenyans? So as much as we report globally and say, okay, fine, out of the $500 billion, we've gotten $400 billion, it goes to this and this. And then we specifically come to Kenya, because the committee needs to see that the actions that are supposed to be in Kenya are actually implemented in Kenya.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we conclude, one of the things that also came out of that summit, plus other climate conversations, is carbon trading. And carbon trading is now becoming a big thing in this country. Is the committee technically aware of carbon trading and what's happening in the country?
Yeah, the committee is technically aware. In fact, as we speak, last week we were with the same committee last week, because a lot of Kenyans don't understand what carbon trading is. A new term. And people don't even think it is anything to go. But you find the president is very specific about it. We have laws that are actually within the floor of the House on how we're going to share the revenues that are coming from carbon trading. And the public who are invited and people who have given their notice. But I think what I can say about this is this week, I think starting today in Embo, the ministry is actually putting up together people to be trained on carbon trading, because a lot of people don't understand. So as a committee, we are ensuring that the Kenyans are also made to be aware about what carbon trading is, so that people are not duped in there.
Mheshimiwa, thank you for joining us today. Come again soon. We continue this conversation. There's a lot of awareness that needs to be created on matters of environment, and then also how to reach out to the committee and to petition the committee. Asante.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am even perplexed that you are so knowledgeable about this. I thought. Yeah.
Titus Lotee is the
you.
Member of Parliament for Kacheliba Constituency. He's been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.